Welcome to the VP Culture course on values science. This is going to be lesson number 1, and we're going to delve deep into the area of what it means to develop values for your culture. So welcome to the value verse, the place where all your values are coming together. So as we have been discussing, you've got your 3 stakeholders of the individual, the team, and the community. They're all held together by valuing people. They're drawn around the orbit of valuing people. And that is empowered by these 3 science areas. And we've covered personality science, emotional science, and now we're into the final phase of talking about value science. Value science is focused on the future and getting people to where you want them to be in the future, so they realize that every step that they're taking is going to a specific place that corresponds with the values of valuing people. How to make those values, how to create them in details, how to create the experiences that those make. That's what we're going to be discussing here today. How to value people by using value science. How to reshape their future and their present with value science. Now, we've got certain laws of reality that hold the whole universe together. And I like to use this as a metaphor. So we've got gravity, we've got the electromagnetic force, and the weak and the strong nuclear forces. And those 4 forces together hold everything together in the universe. And so like those forces that hold culture together, we have forces that hold our cultural and our relational world together. These forces are 6 forces that I call trust, harmony, peace, wisdom, and nobility, and joy. And together, these shape your universe in a way that will hold everyone together and keep everyone going in the right direction for your culture. So we'll get into the details of this, but let's understand how this value verse works so that you can understand what values are and how to use them in your culture in a powerful way. So these values are really the laws of relational cultural reality. Okay, so what we're looking at are ways to relate together that lead to peace. And you think, why peace? Peace is where we psychologically can be together without having difficulty, without having any stress. So if you can get all of the values together, trust, harmony, and then you'll end up in peace, you'll be able to work together and have that non-stressful place where people can go and that they can go to work and have a safe place to work. So that's what we call psychological safety in the past and all of these things. So we'll be using these tools to create these valued experiences that lead to that. And then once we've achieved that, we can working together to create joy. And you think joy, well, that's the enjoyment, the wonder, the awe, the delight in the things that we create. And that's what we want our communities to feel once we've created their service or their product. We also want them to feel that together as a team, as a culture, that we enjoy what we do, we enjoy what we create. So this is what we're trying to create. We're trying to create these laws of reality that will get us working together as a culture. So what we don't want is this. We don't want what we call ignored values, values that sit on the wall, that with these sort of benign qualities of quality, integrity, innovation, and never see the light of day. We talked about in the seminars Enron, who had these kind of values on the wall, but they never really lived them out. In fact, they created a different culture out of their emotional world that they created, and the values that they lived out were completely different. They never talked about these values. They never lived out those values. In fact, their CEO ended up in prison for 24 years because he didn't live out of values. He took down a company of 25,000 people, which was Enron, and he also took down a company of another 9,000 people, which was Arthur Andersen at the time. So the 2 companies failed because they failed to actually live out values. They just ignored them. They thought it was a game. You could put them on the wall and then do whatever you want. The other scenario that I often see is distorted values. Now, this is kind of exemplified by Uber. Uber had all these crazy values like hustle harder, innovate, 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 and these kind of things. And it drove their people to despair. It drove their drivers to despair. It ended up having all sorts of harassment suits and legal action against them because they lived out these wacky values that were distorted. They didn't live out values that led to peace and joy. They let out values that led to destruction. So you might be really keen or really great at innovating within your organization or really fast to the line. But if you don't live out all of the values that create a great culture, you're going to end up with a distorted culture that will end in failure like Enron or like Uber did. So what happens if I don't pay attention to this? We end up creating things without value all day long. Everyone shows up at work and they're saying, what do I do every day? I create things without value. I create things without value. I don't have value. I create things without value. So we don't want that to happen. In fact, we want something quite different to happen. We want you to have creational values. So what does that mean? That you know every level of excellence within your organization. So the values start out in very practical ways of like, what does it take to create a great camera? What does it take to create a great service? All of these things have to be articulated properly. And then those things create experiences, experiential values. Those are the big six that we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about trust, harmony, and peace. And then we're going to be talking about wisdom, nobility, and joy. Those are experiential values that you create by doing your job well. The little details equal these experiences, which create things for people. The ultimate value of valuing people. So we move from the little things that we do every day to the biggest value of all of valuing people. And we do this cycle every single day, from little to experiences to valuing people. We help people in our organizations make those connections of why we're doing it and how we're doing it. It's very important. So that's what the Valueverse looks like, the universe of values that we'll be creating to help you create a great valuing people culture. You have to point people to the reality of what makes the universe tick, the universe of relationships and culture. So let's dive deep. So we're going to be investing a lot of time into training and investing time. You can't do this by just having this webinar alone and thinking we've got this problem solved. You can't put the words on the wall and then walk away. It has to be not ignored and not stilted to just a few values. We have to train and move ourselves towards all of them. We have to develop the skills. So just some of the science. First of all, let's look at the business case studies behind this. First of all, there's two companies that we've detailed in a lot of our talks, Barry Waymiller and Cooper Medical Center. These are two organizations that are dedicated to creating VP cultures that value everyone and value their people. And they've demonstrated that they both had exemplary growth of growing in millions and millions of companies. Barry Waymiller has done this in turnaround companies at least 5 to 6 times. And now they have companies that they own all over the country that they've turned around, not by firing and hiring, just by changing the culture into a valuing people culture. The same with Cooper Medical Center. They radically changed how they did business, and they increased their patient satisfaction, their practitioner satisfaction, and their outcomes and their financial outcomes. So it can be done, and it's a part of the business structure that these values, that when you implement them, you'll change the way your business does business, and it will change your culture forever, for the better. So these values are actually based on what we call vagal tone. And these are high energy states that are safe. When your body can reach high energy states, like I can go to work, I can be excited about our project, I am excited about working on our team, I enjoy this, that's what we call psychological safety, that we can move forward with energy to create things, products and services. That's what you want to get, so that you have joy and the experiences of all of these things that requires wisdom, that requires a lot of noble, hard service. And ultimately it results in, I really like this. I'm amazed at what we do. We exemplify moral courage in what we do. We have created we took exhilarating risks, and we created a product that nobody else did. That's what you can create in a business through high energy, safe places. And then there's the low energy safe, which just means we come to work and we connect, and we can be in a place where I don't ever have to worry about something going to stress me out and take me out. I'm not stressed at work. I can be at peace. I can be calm. I can be serene. I can be grateful. All of these things about my workplace is a place where I don't have to feel the stress of interrelational stress that I'm going to be somehow harmed or taken out because of the drama or the workplace at all. In fact, most workplaces have, the highest rate of heart attacks happens on Monday morning because people don't come into this low energy safe. They come into the stress state right away at work. And that's unfortunate. So we want to create the values that are going to create these two states. And we'll get into more details about how we do that later. So how did we create these values? How did we find these values? Well, first we focused on thousands and thousands of words that describe values in the English language. And then we moved them into 6 categories that we kept trying to reduce those categories until we found only 6 categories of values. And those values are what we'll be presenting to you that every corporation needs to have in order to have a sound culture. All right, so we're going to be talking about Henry Fairweather. He was a software engineer that created an app that revolutionized the cryptocurrency market. And so he was known for his innovation and his hyper intelligence. And so he created a fast growing company that was all focused on innovation. In fact, because that market was so competitive, he had to be first to market, first with the best features. And so he leveraged his huge intelligence to bring that software to light. So what he was able to do was to bring together a team of people that was working frantically and energetically to create this thing, this new software giant that was growing. It had offices all across the United States, and it was growing at a record rate. The problem was he was focused on innovation. That was what his top value was, and he kept telling people to innovate first. Be first to the line, be first to the line. We have to get there fast. And while he reached that, he was unable to communicate harmony to these people. And you think, why doesn't he need harmony? Well, harmony is significant. He was great at marketing. He was great at innovation. He was great at software creation, but people didn't know their roles. And so the company was fraught with infighting because people were trying to fight for his attention, trying to fight for who had authority over what part of the project. He didn't think he needed any of that. So he never clarified any of that. So there was a lot of disorder within this organization. And you think, well, isn't that just management skill? But it's also a value. When people feel valued, when everyone knows their place within the organization, there's clarity. That will create harmony. The other thing that he did is he thought he was the most brilliant person. Maybe he was one of the most brilliant people, but he never realized that he needed the skills and talents of the other personalities that were on his team. He would often be heard saying, like, I'll just do this myself. Nobody else can do this like I can. And didn't realize that he was creating disharmony in his team. So what did end up happening is people ended up leaving the organization in droves. In fact, there was another startup that happened in Boston, and soon that crypto app was outpacing his. In fact, most of his people left for that organization because that organization had a better culture. It was able to manage things well, and he ended up, in the end, he ended up being a minor player in the cryptocurrency market. Let's review this. So what if we were to take this and refocus it with a VP culture focus? And so instead of having the hyper focused on innovation, he was focused on valuing people. He was focused on creating an app for his community that would create great value in the cryptocurrency market. And he was focused on creating great value for each and every employee. He wanted to teach them the skills, the life things that they needed to learn. He wanted to set them free and value each person within his organization. So as they grew, they prioritized values discussion, not just innovation, not just reaching the end at all costs. And so that values discussions created better teams. The teams worked in harmony. They talked about what kind of order they would need, what kind of oversight they would need, who would be in charge of what project, who would have authority over what section of what part of the teams. And they had team leaders and team structures, and they spent time because they knew that that would create harmony within their organization. It would stop the infighting within organizations and startups that often happen when that is not prioritized. And so because that was one of the things they prioritized, they were able to get to this place where they had harmony and peace. People came into the organization and they loved working there. There was another startup in Boston, but nobody wanted to leave this organization to go and work for that other one because they valued the culture. They valued the teams. They valued the interactions that they were having in this culture, and it made all the difference. And that's what can happen when you focus your teams on valuing people first, and the value verse is created within your organization to create a great culture. So they were able to have both innovation and valuing people within their organization because they had a balanced view of their values. They didn't have distorted values, and they didn't ignore values. They encompassed all of them. And so that they were able to be successful and create a VP culture that went on to be far more successful than their competitors. All right, let's look at some group questions here. So question number 1, are there issues that you have seen in business that could be traced to missing values? Have you been in an organization that ever overlooked some values and created some distortions? Question number 2, are there businesses that you have seen that emphasize just one value too much? Which person that you know seems to have their values sorted out well, and why? How did creational, experiential, and ultimate values impact your thinking about values? So those are our online discussion questions that you can discuss with your team. And that brings us to the end of this first lesson of Welcome to the Values Verse, where we started to get a grasp on some of the details that it takes to create a culture based on all of the values that create healthy relationships and healthy culture. So that's lesson number 1, and we look forward to seeing you again at lesson number 2 in this value science course.